morning, students, at the Malik Sandal Institute of Art and Architecture, Bijapur. Design subject for the 4th semester students. I welcome all the students to this lecture on the first assignment in the design. Dear students, as you have already started with the assignment, in which the first part of the pilot survey, in which, since there is a lockdown of pandemic COVID-19, and since we did not want you to travel anywhere outside, you were assigned your own house to be visited. Rather, I can call it as revisiting your own house with an architectural view or an overview, trying to know certain aspects of design, especially in the topic of dwelling. Dwelling, as we all know, has a specific terminology in which it differentiates clearly between just a dwelling and dwelling at home or dwelling in a house. Dwelling is living. When you dwell, it can be an environment which gives you protection, which gives you shelter, which gives you all those conveniences where you can dwell, where you can live yourself. But when it comes to housing, when it comes to living in a house or dwelling in a house, it very much or necessarily means that yes, it is a house and it's not just a dwelling. So today, since we have understood from the past all these lectures that what a dwelling is all about, and now we are focusing on a house and especially on a home. This is basically a home sweet home that we all live in our own homes, wherein we find our own people, our own family members, and then it becomes a home. A house can be anybody's house, your uncle's house, your brother's house, your sister's house, it can be anybody's house. But when it comes to home, it is your own home. So today, since we have selected the home, and further we are trying to take this home wide open onto the adjacent areas or the abutting areas, and then trying to have a survey of all those houses and all those arenas or all those zones, whatever type of zones are found around our house. Since almost all of you have submitted your home drawings, that was a very good job, all my students. That's really so nice of you. And now I wish that we go a little further. And this going a little further is down the line trying and understanding this home or this house or this dwelling in a wider perspective. What is that wider perspective? There are spaces around this house. Although we live in the house, there are different types of spaces within the house. And when you talk about the spaces around the house, there are so many different types of spaces around the house. When it comes to the abutting houses, all of us know that there is at least one road on one side, which means that it is the real means of connectivity from our house to the outside world. And we also know that apart from this road, there can be either are you able to hear all of you? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. Yes, good. So when it comes to the connectivity from the house to the outside world, it can be anything. You can reach out to your own locality. You can reach out to the neighboring localities. You can reach out to any part in this world through this one side which is open onto the road. Now coming to the adjacent sites, there are different types of localities. There are different types of settlements which sometimes...
Sir, Akshay is asking you to write the remarks.
Yeah, okay. I shall do that. So the localities and the settlements, there are different types of settlements. If I have to bring to your notice that you must have seen that there are so many places, cities, towns, villages, which have different origins. Sometimes the city is originated from a temple, sometimes a mosque, sometimes a palace, or sometimes a river. Sometimes it can be a school. These days, unlike previous settlements, which were very much based on the rivers or on the banks of the rivers, like we have River Nile, and you have the whole settlement there, and you have so many. We have Ganges in our own country, we have Yamuna. You can see the settlements around all these rivers. But unlike yesteryears, today we see that the settlements are basically not because of water, but today they are all because of education. This transformation has to be very nicely studied by each one of us. If we can go further down the line, try and understand what are the other aspects, because these days, as we all see, that there are other issues as well. Until some years, maybe 5 to 10 years, we felt that yes, education is very important. All of us should have a school in our locality. But today, once again, there is a fear, there is chaos, there is confusion, and there is unrest. You can call it as political unrest, you can call it as communal unrest, you can call it as any kind of unrest, but there is an issue of security. The safety and security of the people is of prime importance. So how do you take this safety and security into consideration? Safety and security, taking it into consideration, drives us or makes us come closer to an understanding of origination or evolution of certain communities that come across, either the political cross-section, religious cross-section, or the community based on the profession. So dear students, we should all know that the cross-section of the society or the communities that today are coming into existence are not just because of, unlike the previous yesteryears, of water, the need for water, and then later on you can even see down the line when there was industrial revolution, people stayed around the industries because they had to get to work. And there is something known as work-home concept. You go to work and you come back and you stay and you dwell. And in the same way, today, after the industrial revolution, we see that there are different types of professions which have come into existence. The variety of professions has been wider and wider enough, which was not so wide any time in life, in this whole world, as wide as it is today. Let me also tell you that you talk about any profession, none of the professions are something that can be looked down upon. Instead, every profession has its own charm. Every profession has its own existence. Every profession has its own status. So none of the professions is either lower or higher. May it be the profession of a doctor, may it be a profession of a supporting staff. It could be an agricultural based community, none of them are lower. So this is one thing that we need to bear in our minds. But yes, there is a difference. When you talk about all these communities, when you talk about all these different setups, they do have their own obligations with them. They do have their own belongings, their own environment to be set up around them. Because if you talk about a colony for a doctors, you will not have the same environment as it could be for an agri or agro-based community, or an industry-based community, or an education-based community, because that is totally different. The doctors community has or takes its own environment by itself. The agriculture community takes its own existence by the requirements of its own implements and the other requirements like the go-downs and the shelter for the cow and all that. Dear students, Why I'm trying to give you this overview is because you have already crossed one simple exercise of drawing your own house plan, which gives me to be encouraged at this onset and trying to give you a further wider perspective where we can take these drawings into. Now I would wish that from this house you have to start looking around this house. What is happening around this house? Maybe there is an open space onto your right side or onto the right side of your house, or sometimes there is a house, sometimes there is a small cottage industry, sometimes there is a parlor, sometimes there is a shop, sometimes there is something. We don't know what it is. But you are the right person who can tell us as to what is happening around your house. Why are we trying to know what is happening? And the total site that we are selecting here is not more than 2000 square meters. Dear students, please note it down, which is very, very important. So, the area around your house we are selecting in such a way that it is not more than 2000 square meters, which comes to around half an acre of land. In other words, it can be, if you take normally moderate houses that we see of maybe 30, 40 or a bit lesser, usually the localities do have this size. It can be around 10 houses at the most. Why I'm telling 10 houses is because this is inclusive of the roads and the open houses. So we are taking, or we are focusing on not many houses. And why this exercise is given based on maybe 5 houses on the right side, 5 houses on the left side, and 5 houses onto the rear side of your house. Or in all, maybe you can take 20 houses. Why we are talking about these 20 houses approximately, or maybe it can be lesser also if there are more open spaces. Why we are talking only about so much is basically because we don't want a repetition in our designs, or we don't want repetition in trying to understand the structure of any settlement or any locality. Now, coming to the complexities, by not repeating, it gives us to understand that yes, we have an opportunity to go into the complexities of the very setup of all these colonies or communities or all these settlements. So what is it that we find? We find most of them having an orientation. What is that orientation? Orientation is sometimes when the house is oriented towards the road, yes, which is needed by all of us. Yes, it has to be. But there is another orientation. What is that orientation? The another orientation is when we talk about the group of houses, there is something known as a cluster that comes into picture. What is a cluster? Cluster is a group of houses. And when you find a group of houses, all these groups of houses are linked to some common space in between, or some common element in between. That common element can be a garden these days, or it can be an open space, it can be a tree, and and a platform around the tree where all people gather. You can call such a space as a kind of communal space or community space or a common space, or it can also be called as a semi-private space. Now, there is something known as semi-private or semi-public realm. What is that semi-private or semi-public realm? It is nothing but the sanctity, the identity of this particular space, which needs to be respected by all of those who stay around this particular space. Trying to respect this space, not trying to encroach into that, not trying to dirty it, not trying to keep it unclean, or not trying to wear it out or weather it out. So dear students, trying to take care and trying to learn the aspects of caring and sharing when we live with the communities around us. We need to care for one another. So how do people care for one another? We shouldn't throw our garbage into those open spaces. No, that's not good. So what should we do? We should see that someone else also does not do that. Not only that, we should all come together and try to keep those spaces clean, neat, and we have to increase, or we have to have better ambience of those spaces. And those are known as the immediate shared spaces. So that is the sharing activity that happens there. Now, all such clusters, there will be so many clusters put together, and there will be a huge open space. And that huge open space is known as a public space. It can be a school garden or a school open space or a school ground. I'm talking about a government school, not a private school, because that again becomes a private entity. People may not allow you to use that space. I'm talking about gardens. I'm talking about open spaces. I'm talking about all those spaces which are under the government umbrella, or which are under the government, ownership of the government. So what happens to such spaces? If you go to Gandhi Chowk in Bijapur, or you go to any other place, there will be a marketplace. This marketplace is what? It is known as a public place. In any locality, there will be certain markets, or there will be certain shandy which will be filled up every week. You will have one market, and there are different types of spaces. What happens to these different types of spaces? One is a permanent space, the other is a temporary space. Your and my house is a permanent space, while these shandy or these marketplaces are temporary spaces. And these temporary spaces are something that will be repeated from time and again. Now coming to the different types of typology of the places. When we talk about dwellings, it can be a rural entity or it can be an urban entity. But today we are talking about an urban entity, unless otherwise some student from my class says that, sir, I stay in a rural place. I don't mind considering that as something, because it gives us a different perspective altogether, and it gives all of us to learn from it. Because you are supposed to learn a rural and also an urban setup. In the rural setup, as I have already told you, that there are many man-made, in a rural area, there are many natural resources or natural spaces or natural elements. Many natural elements you will find as compared to the man-made elements. In the urban setup, you will see that there are many man-made sources or many man-made resources which people make use of them, like roads, bridges, tunnels, isn't it? And maybe marketplaces, nicely and neatly designed, all those public squares, plazas, and all those spaces that are found in the urban arenas. Now, we are talking about the house and its surroundings, and this dwelling will be revolving around only between 10 to 20 houses along with the open space, and we are trying to restrict the repetition. We are trying to understand more and more of a house, the spaces within this house, the needs of the people inside, different hierarchy of the spaces inside the house and hierarchy of the spaces outside the house. Talking about house as a private entity, going to the semi-private, and then going to the public entity, and trying to finish or trying to understand this within the framework of not more than 2000 square meters. So this is the first assignment. In this, what you are supposed to do, the first and the foremost thing is, please get out of your houses. Maybe today after the class you can go out, try and understand how the locality is around your house. But don't go into the police arena, because police may send you back to your home. Please don't go outside. Just go outside, or you can even go on your own terrace. You don't even have to go anywhere outside. You can click some pictures around, take some photographs. Or what you can do is, you can go to the next street. From there you can take some pictures. You can go to the tallest building on the terrace. From there you can click some pictures. The best is your own terrace. So what you can do is, you can start understanding the built versus open. There is a built environment and there is an open environment. So we will start understanding the relationship between the built and the open spaces. Now, in the built is anything that is built in the form of a building, in the form of a structure, in the form of a house, in the form of an industry, in the form of whatever structure you call, for whatever purpose. So that is a built environment. And we are talking about the open spaces. Open spaces in terms of an open site, open spaces in terms of a road, a street, in terms of some open space for the use of the people around it, or sometimes a garden, a park, playground, or whatever. So all these things put together, you will have an understanding or a fair understanding of the hierarchy of the spaces. So in this, we will then identify as to what is a public space, what is a semi-public or a semi-private space, and then what is a private or a house space. Now, in this exercise, what are we ultimately going to achieve? We are going to achieve three things. The first one is a total study of the overall overview of this locality. in terms of its physical existence, identification of the roads, streets, open spaces, and identification of the structures around, the density of the place will be known. Sometimes the built environment is 70%, sometimes it is 50%, sometimes it is 80%, and the open spaces are very less. Especially when we talk about the slums. In the slums, the efficiency of the open spaces goes down and down. In urban areas, the efficiency of the open spaces goes down and down, and there lies the. So dear students, what are we going to achieve out of this first assignment? The first and the foremost thing that we are going to achieve is the perspective that we carry from our home to the outside environment, trying to cover the physical existence of 2000 square meters, which amounts to half an acre of land, which gives us to understand that from our physical movement and our visual exercise, from the point of view of a student of architecture, the first thing that we are going to achieve is the morphology of the landscape that we live in. When we take the house in which you all stay, you don't have to go anywhere outside. Instead, you have to simply step out of your house. Unless there is the fear of COVID-19, you can very well do that. If there is any fear that there is COVID-19 anywhere outside, please don't go there. But if you feel that you are safe and you can go have a look, please do definitely go and try and feel for yourself as to how and what is this total physical landscape morphology is all about. You will then come to know that in two terms. One is the open spaces and then the built environment. In these two things, you will be able to see through your own eyes, oh my God, the place I live in has an efficiency of 10% of open spaces. In certain places, it is 20%. In some places, it is 30% of open spaces. In some places, it is 40%, and in some places, it is 50%. Let me tell you something. If you have more open spaces, that means the quality of life is also better than the places where you have lesser amount of open spaces. This is the first criteria. So we are trying to test the quality of life based on the open spaces or the efficiency of the open spaces. This is the first criteria which can be very well located or which can be very well pinpointed by our own visual experience. That is the first thing. Now coming to the second achievement, what is it that we are achieving in the second part? In the second part, we are trying to achieve the heterogeneity of the of the land uses that we are staying in. We stay in a place wherein there are different types of user spaces. What are those user spaces or user model? Maybe onto the right side of our house there are residential houses. Maybe to the left side of our house there are shops and a mix of offices. Maybe to the rear of our houses there are open spaces, a mix of gardens, parks, playgrounds, etc. All these things. So we have a different kind of experience altogether. Now, after having an overview of all these things, which comes as the first entity, the second entity is we will simply document it. The documentation part is the second aspect. Now, in this, you have already documented your own house. So you are already halfway through. All you have to do is step out of your house, start. Don't be very specific. Don't go and measure. You can simply, as an architect, or you can simply as a student of architecture, you can draw it. You can take photographs from your terrace. You can take photographs from the streets. You can take photographs from all the sides of your house, the adjoining or the abutting spaces, and then you can record them, and you can even roughly draw it. And as I told you on the other day, if you go to the BDA, the Block Development Authority, or the municipal corporation, there is something known as sheet, SHEET, sheet. Sheet number 1, sheet number 2, sheet number 3, sheet number 100, sheet number 200, like that. There are so many sheets, and those are nothing but your A1 size sheets. On those A1 size sheets, your house lies maybe in sheet number 79, or someone's house lies in sheet number 18, or whatever. You can go there, request them, take the sheet. You can pay them if they charge you 100, 200 rupees. But for that you will have to write a letter to the commissioner over there, and then they will definitely support the students. And since you write that it is for your study purpose, they will definitely share it with you. Take that, and from there you will be able to locate all those open spaces and all those built environment. And all you have to do is just trace it out, and that is your documentation. But as you go roam around, try and write there as to whether it is a residential building, or it is a commercial building, or it is an industrial building, or it is an open space. So try to color them. If it is a residential building, try to give a yellow color. If it is
The seventh process, that is the seventh step, is the total land required for the stations.
if it is a commercial structure, give it a blue color. If it is an industrial entity or a structure, give it a if it is an industrial entity, give it a gray color. Not exactly gray. What do you call the jamun color? The jamun color. What do you call the jamun color? Purple. Very good. That's really nice. So give it a purple color. And if it is a road, give it a gray color. Okay? If it is a garden, give it a green color. And if it is a government building, give it a red color. You understand? So all these color quotations or all these color notations, you will be able to find them from the internet, or I will forward you a file of this as to how to color notate onto all these spaces. So once you document this, which is the second part, now comes the third part. The third part and the last part is the analytical approach in understanding of the total landscape of this particular locality or this particular settlement. Now, what is the understanding or what is the conclusion that you are going to derive out of it? This stands as the most important from all these three. Rather, we are doing it for this particular exercise. We have done all these things together. Now, let me tell you in detail as to what are you going to derive out of it. The first one is you will understand the zoning of the place. What is the zoning of the place? In the zoning of the place, you are going to understand whether the house located is in a residential area or an industrial area or a commercial area or what exactly. We don't know unless we analyze from the surroundings. So the zoning is something that is understood. And when you color notate all these drawings, you will know for yourself as to most of it looks purple. That means I am in an industrial area. Or most of it around my house looks blue. That means my house is located in a commercial area. So on and so forth. So this gets us to understand as to what zone my house lies in. That is the first and the foremost thing. After zoning, what is the second aspect that we are going to achieve? The second aspect that we are going to achieve is the density of the place. Whether I am living in an intensely dense populated area or I am living in a semi-intensely populated area, or I am living in an area which is sparsely dense or which is sparsely located or which is sparsely built. What does that mean in all the three cases? That means the total built environment over or against the open spaces that are found in the settlement or in the locality that we are surveying gives us to understand that this is either a rural place or it is a town or it is a city or it is a metropolitan or what exactly we don't know. And apart from this, the typology of the houses, the typology of the environment that you stay around, you will then come to know. When you mark out all these spaces around, color notate them, then you will come to know for yourself that yes, this particular building or this particular house is located in this kind of an environment. Now, coming to the third aspect. First one was, what was the first one? Can anyone tell me? Hello? What was the first one? Very good. First one was the zoning. Second one was the intensity of houses, isn't it? And The third one is the third one is the quality of life. What makes the quality of life of the inhabitants of a particular house either improve, increase, or decrease? It is basically based on the environment. A person, when he stays in an environment wherein there is continuously some or the other sound disturbing him all the time. Like say for example, there is some cottage industry around him and he stays there. What happens to him? He cannot have proper sleep. He is disturbed all the time. He cannot speak to his people. He is disturbed all the time. He cannot think because there is a break in his thinking, and thereby the quality of life starts going down and down and down and down. In the same way, if there is an environment which does not give him a fragrance of smell, odors keep coming from some or the other sides, will he find his life a qualitative life? No. If he starts getting odors from so many other places which he simply cannot stop them, that means the quality of life simply goes on decreasing. If he doesn't find, now the third aspect is, if he doesn't find many open spaces around, if he does not find open spaces around his house, that means he is not getting fresh air. As we all know from our previous class, we have discussed about it that there should be at least 15 cubic feet of air change per person per minute in any given room or in any given space. So this is the air changes that is expected for an environment to be neat and clean. Now coming to the light, we talked about the ventilation. Coming to the light has to have at least 20 to 30% of the wall area to be open, and the light should enter from at least 20 to 30% of the total wall area. Only then the house will be well lit. So we are now talking about the quality of life based on light, ventilation, open spaces, noise level, the smell and the fragrance. And now coming to the last one is the ambience of the place. What does the ambience of the place tell us or convey us? The ambience of the place is something that creates a kind of vigor, vitality, importance of this particular place that we live in, and it encourages us from within. We feel encouraged. We feel that, oh my God, the place I live in is so beautiful, so cute, so nice. Let me enjoy this place. Let me have fun here. Let me create something here. Let me try and do something something new, something different, something unique. Let me create something. And that gives me a kind of vigor, a kind of enthusiasm from within. So, dear students, we are on to achieve all these things, and we will, please make a note of all these things. I will also send you across. I have in the previous text that I have sent you, all these things are there, but I shall send you one more file which will be a bit in detail, so that it will point out as to what are the achievements that we are going to get out of it. So is it now clear that how we are going to head towards or move towards the exercise, the first exercise? But students, please don't take much time on this, because beyond the drawing of your house, I am not asking you to measure anything else. Please don't think that I'm asking you to measure anything and then try to do it. It is very interesting. We are looking beyond measuring and drawing. In measuring and drawing, you have other subjects to guide you through. Maybe your building construction, maybe your all other subjects will guide you. But here in this, you are supposed to learn certain psychological aspects, certain environmental aspects, certain qualitative aspects, certain quantitative aspects, and certain vigor and interest filled with ambience and filled with fragrance, filled with quality of life spaces that we are supposed to explore. So I conclude with these achievements that you are supposed to do in the assignment 1. Thank you one and all.